So recently I've been experimenting with different types of lighting, and as you can probably guess from the portraits you just saw and the title of this video, one of those lighting styles is hard light. I had never really given this style of lighting any thought, mainly because when I first started off as a studio portrait photographer, soft lit portraits were always my #1 goal because I just really liked how flattering that kind of lighting looked on people. But things changed and my interest in hard lit portraits went from 0 to let me see what I can do with this. Plus, I saw it as a great way to accomplish two things. First, as a photographer, diving into a new style of portraits, it meant that I would be learning a new lighting technique and therefore expanding my knowledge on how to light a subject. And secondly, it meant that I would be expanding my portfolio. Two things that I think are always positive for a photographer. First off, you learn a new technique, and secondly, you get to add more work to your portfolio. So when I decided to try this lighting out, I contacted Kelly, who is a model here in Los Angeles. I had previously worked with Kelly, but for the portraits we took in our first session, I had used a softbox across every look we did because I was only after that softness you get from using a modifier like that. But with this new look, we were going for the opposite of soft, so I ditched the softbox in favor of a standard Bowens mount reflector. The one I used here is 7 inches wide with a silver interior, and the light used was the Godox MS300. I could have gone bare bulb, but then that would have caused the light to spill all over the place, and I wanted to concentrate the light output towards Kelly to give me the full power of the hard light. As for the energy or vibe of this look, what I had in mind was to have Kelly positioned up against the white V-flat and act as if we were outside shooting under the sun and had come across a white wall for her to pose. The light I had raised up and pointed down at an angle trying to imitate the sun in the sky, and in order to get very noticeable shadows, I positioned the light roughly at a 90-degree angle from Kelly so that I could get somewhat of a dramatic shadow stretching on the V-flat behind her. Since I was using no sort of diffuser on the strobe, I had the flash power set to the lowest amount of 1/32 and shot these at f5 with an ISO of 200 to help me get more of that high-key look. I could have adjusted the power of the strobe instead of increasing the ISO, but personally for me, I like to leave the strobe at a power level I'm comfortable with, knowing that I can get away with tweaking in-camera settings like the ISO or the aperture to determine the final exposure. As for the rest of the gear I shot these with, I used my trusty Sony A7 III with my Tamron 28-75mm f2.8 version 1. So that's what I was able to achieve with hard light using a white V-flat. But what about if I were to use a black V-flat? Well, for another shoot I did with Hal as the model this time, I wanted to see what sort of effect the combination of hard light and a black background would have. I also changed the position of the light by having it shine down on Hal from her left as opposed to before with Kelly where I had it lighting her from the right. There were two reasons for this change. First off, I wanted to make sure that the corner being created by the black V-flat was going to be noticeable and not too dimly lit. So I had the strobe point in the direction of that corner. And second, I just simply wanted to have the shadows stretch in the opposite direction from Kelly's look to add some variety. I also changed the f-stop from f5 to f4 because I wanted the exposure to be higher due to the darker background. And swapping out the white V-flat for the black also caused the overall mood and energy to change as well. While Kelly's shoot can be seen as having more energy, for this one we decided to be more calm and edgy with the style, hence the open blouse. So what did I learn from using hard light for portraits? Well, for one, they're pretty damn cool and fun. And number two, I also enjoyed creating hard shadows. As a portrait photographer that was always aiming to create soft shadows, I've now come to realize that hard shadows can play a second character in the image alongside the model, adding a layer to the overall artistic value of a portrait, in my opinion. And the third thing I learned is that I really enjoyed capturing these portraits with hard light horizontally rather than vertically. I'm not exactly sure why, but for some reason it just felt right, and I just kept wanting to capture more of these horizontally. Maybe it's because that's how I was able to put more emphasis on the shadows being casted onto the background, or maybe it's because these portraits captured horizontally just looked completely different from any of my past work, and so it just drew me in, and I wanted to take more portraits shot in this style because it just felt new and fresh to me. But what I do know is that I'm definitely going to be adding more portraits shot with hard light into my portfolio moving forward, because I just really like the different energy and tone that this type of lighting gives to the portraits compared to the portraits I've shot previously with soft light. So when it comes to photography, have you ever tried something new that you previously had zero interest in, but then were later surprised in a good way after trying that thing? Like, let's say shooting with a specific focal length or using a specific piece of gear. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. I'll be down there talking to everyone. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up to help me out with YouTube's algorithm. And thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.